Currently, we have a historical traditional paradigm for dealing with catastrophes. It is a very limited, narrow, keyhole view of the understanding of what has happened, why it's happened, how to solve it, what to do about it. So from the previous paradigm, hurricanes would happen every few years in different parts of the world, and we would have a single reactive protocol or set of resources available to solve that perceived problem or issue. Or in the case of forest fires, we would have a set requisite number and configuration of resources to put out the fire and to save people from being burned or to relocate them or whatever was required. And we now have Hurricane Ida, which is, it hit New Orleans and Louisiana first, and now it's gone up into the Northeast and has wreaked as much havoc in the Northeast as it has in Louisiana in different ways, flooding, etc., and more lives lost. We're suggesting that there must be a new paradigm of how we manage and prevent and resolve catastrophes in the world, because if they're going to be coming at us faster and bigger and more intensely, our current system is inadequate to the task of mitigating or minimizing or solving for bigger, more intense, and more rapid catastrophes or losses of life or damage to portions of our infrastructure or our supply chains. So if we don't devise a comprehensively new point of view on what's really needed for the near-term and long-term future, and staff for it, resource for it, spend and invest for it, apply resources in every necessary way, then we will fall far behind the catastrophe curve, and we'll be busy putting out forest fires and saving people from floods, so much so that key core necessary resources will not be available to develop a sustainable life process for humanity. And we've used the metaphor before of shallow water blackout, where deep divers who hold their breath and dive down 400 feet underwater and then swim to the surface in a single breath sometimes die 5 or 10 feet from the surface because they've run out of resources. They've run out of oxygen and energy. And we don't want the human species to die of shallow water blackout, to reach a point where we have inadequate resources to transform ourselves into a sustainable life process globally, not just America, not just the Western countries, not just the haves. So we need a new infrastructure and support system for our world that will allow humanity to continue to function and survive in order to continue functioning in the midst of global climate change symptoms, whether that means increasing temperatures, lack of fresh water, forest fires, hurricanes, climate migration, or triggered war or terrorism as a result of climate change dynamics. In order for that to occur, we feel that a new functional philosophy of sustainable living for all of humanity must be designed, prototyped, tested, implemented, and evolved. And that philosophy of sustainable living must be complete, comprehensive, cover all the bases in any particular geographical venue in which it's applied. And that new model and paradigm must be intrinsically motivating, not in a capitalistic sort of way motivating, meaning what's in it for me, what will I get out of it? And also not just from a vantage point of, well, I want my children to be able to live now and in the future. So I'm going to bite the bullet or put my shoulder to the wheel in order to bring this about. It's got to be intrinsically motivating, and that motivation must drive what we invest in: our time, our energy, our technology, our money, our human resources, a whole new model of investment, an application of resources that is not just to put out fires and not just to transform ourselves into what might be termed a green economy of capitalistic, competitive, tribal, conflicted, competing entities that don't have each other's backs nor each other's well-being in mind. This new model of investment being one example of the potential of it. We've known for many years that a virus such as COVID could wreak havoc in our world. It's been a well-known fact, and plans to mitigate it were created. They were not adequately implemented, and the plans themselves were not adequate because they did not involve an investment strategy in adequate supply chain resources to be able to create a mechanism for creating immunizations for the virus, vaccines, meaning that we fell back on traditional capitalistic mechanisms for vaccine creation, and we did so reactively rather than proactively. Then we distributed them very poorly. We didn't educate for the process hardly at all, and we've lived with unnecessary death and conflict and misinformation and polarization of the population of the world as a result. And we even have false vaccines being distributed in the world that aren't really of benefit to people that would otherwise, well, that would certainly need a vaccine that works and don't have a way to know whether what they're receiving will help them or hurt them. So this process of understanding how to invest in our future, not on a return in investment, on investment point of view, on a sustainable future perspective. So for example, if all of the nations in the United Nations had gotten together and pooled their funds and created a pharmaceutical system that could create vaccines for any virus that came up, and then that was engaged and was equally distributed on a cost basis to all nations, that would be a completely different paradigm and would potentially have made vaccines available to the world faster and more comprehensively and at lower cost to everyone, and not to the wealthy countries alone, or not more to them than to the poor countries. And then if that distribution of vaccines had been comprehensive, there would be less mutations of the virus coming back around for us to then be required to create a new vaccine for. So I don't know if we're making sense with this communication of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and a collective proactive effort that serves the entire global community is worth far more than keeping a for-profit, often greedy or corrupt, capitalistic mechanism in place to generate solutions that need to be, are by their very definition, global solutions, rather than solutions just for America or just for the UK or just for China. So all of that leads us to the next step, what we call or referring to as the social movement engine, a comprehensive global transformation support mechanism, an environment supportive of conscious collaboration, education, transformational development, implementation of solutions, and implementation of a new life process for humanity globally.